So let's jump into lesson 1, which is gain an overview of the business and gather financial information. And we're going to be using the concepts here applied to an example. What we're going to use is Intel. So we've set the stage, and we're using Intel as the sample company. And these are the 6 steps to get us ready to jump into the actual analysis. First, what is the mission statements? Before we start evaluating a company, we need some basic. First is, what is the objective of the company in terms of its future? Second is, what is their business model? How do they make money? Who do they sell to? And who are the main partners and stakeholders in the business? Third, we'll look at the income statement and do a first pass, just to get a feel for the numbers. Are they growing? Are they making money or losing money? Do they appear to have high profit margins or low profit margins? So this is to peruse the statement just to see what we can gain just from a first run through. The next is look at their balance sheet, same objective. Let's look at the numbers and see how they look. Do they have a lot of asset growth, or are they pretty stable? How did they finance their business? Are they in a lot of debt, or do they have a little debt and a lot of equity? So just looking at the general characteristics of what kind of assets they have and their capital structure. Next, we'll look at the statement of stockholders' equity. And this is just a reconciliation from the beginning of the year to the end of the year of what happened in the shareholders' accounts. It shows if we issue stock, if we repurchase stock, if we made profit, if we paid dividends. So the basics of what you'd want to know if it were your money, if you were the shareholder. And finally, we'll look at the statement of cash flows. And as mentioned, this will look at the cash generated or used from running the business, that's called operating, from investing in fixed assets or in securities, that's called investing, or getting money or paying back money to loan sources like banks or securities markets like bonds, common stock. First, we'll look at the mission for the company. The example is Intel, and I pulled this straight from their website, and it says, our mission is to utilize the power of Moore's Law to bring smart connected devices to every person on Earth. Moore's Law is the observation. It's really more of an observation than a law. But the observation is that there's a rapid acceleration of the amount of processing that can be handled by a chip. And furthermore, those increases in productivity also come with the reduction of costs. So Moore's Law has characterized the semiconductor industry since it began. Just rapid reduction of costs while simultaneously increasing power of computing. And the vision, if it's smart and connected, it's best with Intel. Pretty broad, pretty ambitious. And our values, quality, risk-taking, and inclusive, great place to work, discipline, customer orientation, and results orientation. Every company has a mission statement, and you may have to find it by digging it out of their website or reports. But these are things to know before you enter it because it gives context for the financial results that you're about to see. The business model, it's good to have a one-page view of the company. Intel, let's start with where they get their products. Well, they have some third-party manufacturer plants that manufacture for Intel, but mainly Intel makes its money from manufacturing their own chips, and that's the second group. And there are some Intel-affiliated manufacturing plants. So these are where there might be a partial interest of Intel. So it's a combination of wholly owned, partially owned, or not owned plants where Intel gets their products. Now that we have Intel has the products, what do they do with the products? They sell to original equipment manufacturers called OEMs. They sell to original design manufacturers, ODM, and they sell to distributors of the chips themselves. And all those together go to manufacturers and system integrators to then put together solutions for clients. Any company has a number of different stakeholders, and we're going to use this graphic to show Intel. They have competitors. We label those A, so that's a reasonable stakeholder in their success or failure. They have buyers, which are their customers. They have suppliers, which is their supply chain. They have substitutes may come in, and those are people like AMD. They also manufacture microprocessor chips. And then they have new entrants. There may be new people who are entering the business. So those are what we call Porter's Five Forces, and those are some of the major industry participants that Intel confronts every day. And outside are all the other stakeholders. They may be governmental, or they could be creditors, or they could be stockholders, regulators, authorities, labor force, investors, governance, which in terms of who is involved in decision making, distribution, voters, and global forces. So in addition to the very near to your daily activities through Porter's Five Forces, we have a larger group of stakeholders that are all as important as dealing with your core business, right? So those are understanding, again, the context of the business and the industry in which the company, in this case Intel, operates. Where do I find financial statements? There are several places to go. You could go to the company website directly in Intel and look for a section called Investor Relations or Other or Corporate. Those are names we typically see on websites. Remember that websites are usually there for other purposes, not for investors to find their statements. So it's usually for e-commerce purposes or to disseminate information to customers about their products. But most websites will have a fairly easy to find section where investors go to look for things like financial statements. The second is Google it. We've done that a lot. So you could simply Google Intel financial statements. It will probably find that section of the Intel website for you or other sources of receiving that information. Or you could go to the system of record, which for the United States is the SEC. All companies that are publicly traded must file with the SEC. So the SEC has a website that they allow the public to obtain the filings, all the filings, not just the annual reports that have been submitted to the SEC. And that we call EDGAR. So the long URL is sec.gov/EDGAR. And that is where you would find a search box where you can pick by ticker symbol or by company and find the information you're seeking. The 10K for the SEC is the form number for the annual report. And this is the required filing, and everything's very structured. The table of contents is structured, and the contents and the rules by which the information is presented is structured. So the SEC form, although it's daunting and not really entertaining looking, it is, once you become familiar with it, fairly easy to find and navigate because you're familiar with the table of contents and how companies tend to provide information as required by the SEC.